town.
All right, good morning, everyone. As we get settled here on a rainy morning here in Austin. Good morning, my name is Matt Ewalt. I serve the Texas Tribune as Senior Director of Events and Live Journalism. Welcome to those joining us in person here in Austin and those joining us online around the state for our conversation with Austin Mayor Kirk Watson about his priorities for the city's future. Our program will run an hour, with 45 minutes of moderated conversation and 15 minutes of Q&A. And so that we can get to as many questions as possible, we'll be doing all Q&A through our Q&A portal at texastribune.org/ask. You will also find signage around the room at these high tables over there and over there with a QR code and URL. And if you're old school and just want a card to write your question on, find me and we'll ask your questions at the end of the program. We are always grateful for the support of our sponsors. Our major sponsors are the Austin Board of Realtors and Unlock MLS, Circuit of the Americas. Our supporting sponsor is Flavor Hospitality Group. And though corporate sponsors and donors underwrite this event, they play no role in determining the content, speakers, or line of questioning. We also want to thank Austin Community College District and the folks here at Austin Community College's Rio Grande campus for hosting us today in this great event space. Here to offer a welcome on behalf of ACC is Brian Port, Director of the Center for Government and Civic Service and Adjunct Professor of History here at Austin Community College.
Good morning, everybody. I wish we could bring you better weather, but we've brought a great event, hopefully, for everyone today.
Don't blame me.
But welcome to ACC, Mayor Watson. We're also joined today by one of our trustees, Manny Gonzalez, and our ACC's very own Vice Chancellor for Community and Government Affairs, Dr. Chris Cervini. As mentioned, I'm Brian Port. I've had the opportunity to retire early from a federal government career to come here to ACC and to stand up this center. And so that's actually not connected to recent events. I had a chance to retire a good year ago to come to this great institution. So ACC has got a lot of interesting things that are going on. Hopefully many of you are aware of some of these initiatives. They include under our new-ish, he's been here I guess a little bit longer now than to be called brand new, but new chancellor, to offer free tuition to students graduating high school in our service area. Of course, the core mission is education, and we continue to do that in a number of interesting ways that are meant to reach out to more folks and make education more accessible. Dual credit programs, for example, and early college high school programs are amongst them. Workforce training initiatives that are helping the semiconductor industry as it moves and expands its operations in Austin, but also other workforce training programs that are helping to track folks directly into jobs that complement the work that we're doing to set folks up for success in completing educational programs here and beyond. At the center itself, we do some what I believe is interesting work. Of course, we have all the things that we do as a college that are technical and educational. There's a citizenship aspect in the center that we've established here. It is meant to enable and empower our students, but also faculty, staff, and community to be more impactful civic leaders and public servants. And so we spend a lot of time working in those areas, and that includes some initiatives with the city. We are partnered with, Mr. Mayor, your Office of Innovation on something called the Open Government Partnership Program, which is a federal international program that is very much in line with this event today to promote transparency and innovation in government. And on behalf of that program, we have formed a student group that is doing the monitoring of the city's implementation of their 2025 plan that we run and host out of here in terms of that particular activity. And that's a great segue into today's event, which I'm very much looking forward to. Welcome again. Hopefully we'll see many of you back for many things in the future, including our esteemed mayor and our colleagues from the Tribune. And have a great event. Thank you very much.
Brian, thank you so much. Just a note for those who are joining us here, make sure you stick around for a great lunch that we're going to have immediately following the program. We want to thank all those around the state who make the journalism of the Tribune possible. Journalism including events like this, and they do so by becoming Texas Tribune members. To learn more and to become a member, you can visit texastribune.org/support. That's texastribune.org/support. I want to mention a couple upcoming events, including a schedule note. We have a conversation with State Senator Charles Perry that Matthew will be moderating, originally scheduled for next Tuesday, February 4th. We're needing to move that. We're rescheduling today. So make sure to stay tuned to our events page at texastribune.org/events for that new date. But also on March 5th, we encourage those here in Austin, those around the state, to think about joining us in Houston and online for a day-long symposium, a day-long program titled A Blueprint for Texas Cities, Growth, Challenges, and Opportunities, when we will celebrate what makes Texas cities so special and discuss the urgent policy action needed during the 2025 Texas legislature to help our city's growth and success over the next 5 years and beyond. You can learn more about this event and other events around the state at texastribune.org/events. So let's get to today's program. Kirk Watson has been immersed in public policy in both local and state government in Texas for over 3 decades. He won his first term as Austin mayor in 1997 and was reelected with 84% of the vote. He returned to Austin City Hall in 2023 for a third term as mayor after serving more than 13 years in the Texas Senate, and then was elected to a full term this fall. Our moderator today, Matthew Watkins, began his duties as editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune in September, but he's been with the Tribune in various leadership roles since 2015. I thank Mayor Watson for joining us this morning, and with that, I turn the program over to Matthew.
All right, thanks, Matt, and thank you, Mayor, for being here with us today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so you are fresh off of taking the oath of office for your second term.
Well said.
And after you did that, you talked a little bit about approaching this term, this 4-year term, with the kind of philosophy of practical idealism. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means and how that's kind of guiding your approach?
Sure. First of all, let me say thanks to all of y'all for being here, and thank ACC for doing this. I think ACC is a real jewel in our community, and we'll probably talk a little bit. I'll have reason to talk a little bit more about ACC later. But yeah, so January 6th was when I was sworn in for this, I guess, what is a 4th term as mayor. And one of the things that I focused on in a very brief speech was what was just said, a practical idealism about local government. And there's a couple of things that I mean by that. One is that the idealistic part of it is, in my view, one of the great things about local government. And what I mean by it is that it's the government closest to the people. So you can literally reach out and touch folks. You can talk to them in the grocery store, at restaurants, and they come up to you and talk to you about what it is that's important to them. But it's so intricately tied into the quality of life of people that it's okay for us to be idealistic about what it is we want it to be and how we want it to serve us and how we want it to create the future for our children. That is a key part, I think, of the role of local government, is that aspect of quality of life. But there has to be a practicality to that, because we can't wave a magic wand and get what it is we want, and that's especially true when there is chaos and chaotic government that impacts what we're trying to do at the local level as well. So, practical idealism. And part of the message that I was trying to convey is let us as Austinites be idealistic. Let us talk about our values. Let us set those values, and let us be very visionary when it comes to what we want to achieve. But let us also recognize that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to have conflict. It's going to be some things you just cannot do even though you want to do them. And it's working in partnership many times with people that otherwise you know, if you could wave a magic wand, you might not be looking at how they're approaching things. And it's doing things in a way where you don't create unnecessary enemies.
Right. So you were sworn in on January 6th. Not too long after that, the legislature comes to town.
Somebody told me that.
Yeah. Not too long after that, a new president is sworn in.
Yeah.
Who also has now served non-consecutive terms. So, you know.
Yeah. Thanks for making it no fun. Yeah.
It seems like it's probably not a stretch to say that a lot of kind of how these next few months are defined for you will be not just what's happening at City Hall, but how you and other people of the city are reacting to what's being done at the Capitol,
sure,
in the White House, and things like that. Let's talk about the legislature first.
Okay.
The legislature, there are a lot of people in the legislature who view Austin as a sort of anathema to the values that they, you know, feel were brought to them in office. There's sometimes a willingness to, you know, relish a fight with Austin in those types of ways. What's on your mind as this legislative session begins, and how it might impact Austin?
Well, so back to the practicality, right? It's important for us as citizens and as mayors and elected officials to recognize that part of the practicality of being able to govern, of being able to try to achieve the idealistic view of what we want our city to be and to achieve the visions that we want, part of the practicality of that is the context in which you do that governance. And, you know, the legislature for the past several sessions of the legislature has had kind of a negative feeling about cities in general. Not just Austin, but cities in general. And we can talk about why that is, but there's clearly some politics that plays out in all of that. But we have to govern in that context. We also have some issues that, you know, Austin is Austin, and we are seen as the blueberry in the tomato soup, or however somebody wants to say it, and so that does get us some special attention. Not to mention the fact that the capital's in the state of Texas is in Austin, and so people get to be here and they see things that they might not like or think they could do better. So how do we approach that? Well, having served as a state senator for 13 and a half years, and having been mayor before, I think there's two parts to that, and I suggested it in that first answer. One is we have to look for where we can partner on issues related to state government. And I think there are 3 or 4 really important issues really related to the idealism and the vision of what we want our city to be that we can partner with. One, I looked over at you when they mentioned Chairman Perry, because you're going to do an interview with Chairman Perry. And of course, he is leading a major water initiative. And I leaned over and said, on water? And he said, yeah. Matthew said, yeah. Well, that is a key part of how we see ourselves in Austin, and we've already been talking, right? So I look forward to that. That ought to be one of the areas we partner. Housing and affordability. The leadership at the state capitol, they're talking about housing and affordability in a way that we ought to be able to partner, particularly since Austin has now become the vanguard in the country of leading on that issue, addressing people living unhoused. That is something that I think we ought to also be able to partner. Now, we're going to stand up for Austin's values on the things that do lead us to a fight, but back to my point, I want us to do those in ways where we're talking to them and not creating unnecessary enemies so that we don't have room to be able to do things that we can partner on. And that is one of the parts of the practical, that's part of the practical part, how we go about doing our business with them. So, there are going to be some fights. There were some fights last session, but I think we didn't win everything we were planning on winning or wanting to win, but we won some, and we did it in a way where hopefully we can continue to talk. I really think that my experience in the Senate and my successes in the Senate speak to that philosophy.
Yeah, that kind of leads into what I wanted to ask next, which is how do you feel like the relationships you built in the Capitol, do you feel like you have relationships you can use in order to, maybe it's get some progress on some of those things you just mentioned, maybe it's try to turn the temperature down a little bit on the things where you might be targeted?
No, absolutely. I've got a lot of friends in the Capitol, and we may disagree really and do disagree really, really strongly on some specific policy issues, even from time to time on ways things get approached. But ultimately, those relationships matter. Those relationships have mattered. And, maybe I'm just weird, but I actually look forward to having the opportunity to be at the Capitol, to make the case, to talk to people, and to try to find where we agree on things that we can partner on.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about some of those issues here in a little bit, but while we're still talking about kind of relationships with the government, let's talk about the Trump administration for a little bit. I don't have the number right in front of me, but I think it's fair to say that Austin gets a lot of federal support, through grants. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's been an interesting week for you and the city staff.
It's been an interesting week.
Seeing through this idea of putting a pause on federal grants. Tell us a little bit about what your reaction was to this news. I know there was a court temporarily at least blocking it,
right.
but what's been going on this week related to that?
Well, of course, last week there was some freezing of grant monies related to energy, and then this week we had the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, put out the memo that purported to freeze everything, I guess. So we have been doing a lot of work, my office and other offices at the city, looking at all of the impact. There is little question that if it stays the way OMB's memo was written, it could have a huge impact. I'll just give a couple of examples of things that are important to Austin. One is the airport. So our airport, which I believe, and I've been saying for a while now, I think we're about 6 to 8 years behind on what we ought to be doing at that airport, but we're now doing it, and we're moving very rapidly and very efficiently and very well. But over the next 2 years, we have anticipated spending a little over $900 million, and a third of that would be through federal grants. Those are capital projects that would be devastatingly impacted at our airport. Roadways and infrastructure like that. There's about 230 to 235, 240 million dollars worth of grants that would be impacted. Everything from caps on I-35, as we discuss I-35, caps on I-35, or the Safe Streets program. I've been bragging about the Safe Streets program and the grants we've gotten from the federal government at U.S. Conference of Mayors ever since I've been in office, because that's really important to what we're doing. The Barton Springs Road Bridge reconstruction, that is through a grant. So that gives you some example. And then those are capital projects, but when you talk about people, there's about $40 million in our in Austin public health that deals with things like vaccines and tuberculosis clinics, nutrition for mothers and children, preventative type medicine, emergency response, things of that nature that would have a huge impact. So we're digging through all of that, but those are just, I mean, I could sit here for a while and walk you through the potential devastation of those kinds of things. So, it's Wednesday.
So in that memo that you mentioned from the OMB, there was a pause, and the stated reason for the pause was to sort of identify and potentially root out funding that goes to support things, many of which have been very important to the city of Austin, to the city council, and supporting. We're talking about DEI initiatives.
Exactly.
We're talking about things to support people who are transgender children, in particular, things like that. Things that there's not going to be a lot of support among you and your colleagues, I would imagine, to stop doing. How willing are you to get into that with the federal government? How willing are you to put at risk certain amounts of federal funding in order to uphold some of those things that y'all have pushed for?
Well, once again, we're going to defend our values, and I would come at that answer a couple of ways. One is we need to finish the analysis of all this does. Keep in mind that this OMB put out the memo, and then when people said, wait a minute, you know what you just said? And their response was, oh, well, we didn't mean that. Go back to the talk about chaos and that kind of thing. Sometimes if you don't, and this is my point of view, is if people don't believe government really does anything good, they don't believe in government, they sometimes don't see how good government is doing, and they don't realize the impact that it's going to have. And I think that's part of what's happened here. So number one is we need to see what they actually say ends up happening before there's complete panic on something. Number two is, as you pointed out, there's a stay pending at least until Monday, and we'll see whether that stay goes further than that and how that will have an impact. But we're going to have to we will continue to do that, and we will look at the impact it will have and make some decisions about how we want to approach it, including how we might want to approach certain things where we're not going to get funding that we've relied upon, and is there something we were going to want to do at a local level to try to address those. But it's real early in that process, and I'm not going to prejudge or throw a punch until I know where we are, and then we're going to defend the things that we believe in and that we were elected to do, again, in a practical way.
Another aspect of this is immigration enforcement. Trump has made no secret of a desire to increase immigration enforcement, begin what he describes as mass deportations. There were some ICE operations in Austin over the weekend. Texas has a state law requiring cities and counties and other local governments to cooperate with immigration enforcement in efforts. What's the answer going to be when and if ICE is asking to provide support for some of these operations?
Well,
here?
we're going to follow. Let me back up. There's a couple of things to say about that. One is that it is palpable, the fear that is out there in our community. I can only imagine the level of fear, and that really, I can get real emotional and bugged about what's going on in our community right now. But what's important is the city of Austin, this is primarily a federal activity, and the city of Austin doesn't have any control over that. The city of APD is not involved in enforcement. And although I'm staying in close contact with law enforcement and others to gain as much information as I can, one of the things we need to be careful about is not adding to the fear. and because it is a very real and very serious thing. ICE right now, at least my understanding, and what they're saying is that their priorities haven't changed. There's more going on, but their priorities haven't changed in terms of what they're doing in terms of enforcement prior to January 20th. And those are primarily what they perceive to be a threat to national security, people with a criminal background, or someone that there's a final federal deportation order. And so that's important for people to know in terms of dealing with the fear. And I want to also say, while we can't control, the city of Austin can't control what's going on in this primarily federal activity, and we're not involved in the enforcement, immigration enforcement, that doesn't mean planning can't occur. And so I want to encourage anybody that's watching this to be doing planning. Know your rights. Be prepared in terms of making sure that you have phone numbers that you might need if something were to happen. Make sure you know how you're going to be in contact with families, those sorts of things. It is important for everybody to plan in that regard. We will continue to monitor. We will continue to pay attention. It is, again, it's been part of, in concert with other executive orders, it has made local government across the country, and there was a conference call that I'm not on because of this, with other mayors just today. So there's a lot of effort going on in that regard.
One other aspect of kind of relations to the federal government that has less to do with the new administration is, the city of Austin, the region got a lot of money from ARPA, right? That money will, expire. I know that the city has spent in different ways, toward homelessness and other aspects in that area. I believe a city council member at a recent meeting sort of described it as an ARPA cliff, a financial cliff. Tell us about the budget position y'all are in as those monies are going to expire, and are there programs that are happening now that are going to have to not continue looking forward?
The way I've likened it is we're in that part of the movie where we're all in the raft, and you all watching the movie know that there's a waterfall right over there, and we're all saying, "What's that noise? What's that noise?" And that's where we are, right? You have a couple of things that have happened, it seems to me. One is tons of ARPA money came in, that relief money came into the city. Much of it, a lot of it was one-time money, and some of it was used for ongoing expenses, and it came in roughly at the same time that the legislature in 2019 passed SB 2, which created a cap of 3.5% on cities being able, or local governments being able to increase the tax rate. So that cap on the tax rate to some great degree has been masked because of all this federal money that was coming in. So it will have an impact. And here's the way we're going to approach that. Yesterday, we created all of the council committees, and I, as mayor, in collaboration with and consultation, I think consultation is the word in the code, consultation with the council, appointed the chairs and the vice chairs of the different committees. And our audit and finance committee is going to be more of a finance committee than it has been in the past, and I'm going to chair it. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin the process right now. In January, we're going to begin the process of looking at all of those things, including one of the first things we're going to look at is all of the ARPA money that's been coming in that has been used for one-time, that was meant for one-time expenses, but that's been used for ongoing expenses, so that we can identify the first big hole. And what we're going to do is methodically and with process start that so that this doesn't end up with a budget being dropped in July or so, and now we're having to look at all of that. A lot of people have asked for, and we have a task force for a comprehensive bond election. Well, what's the impact of a comprehensive bond election when we're doing all of these things? One of the areas that I think, one of the reasons I think our homeless system was broken was the funding mechanisms and how that was done. That's going to have to be something we look at. So I don't know right now what we will address specifically, but the only reason I don't know is because I'm setting up a system so that we can do this common sense, smart, and the right way.
So I'm hearing it's kind of too soon to know kind of what programs will need that look.
Yeah, I don't think we've done the analysis, and we haven't until yesterday had the system set up where we could do that analysis.
Is it feasible? Is it conceivable in your mind that the end of this process could lead to the city going to the voters about possibly raising taxes?
We're at that point in the way I do things where everything's possible. I don't want to rule out anything, but I'm also not ruling in anything. What he's referring to, of course, is the idea that SB 2 that I mentioned from the 2019 legislative session, which, by the way, I voted against, but just for the record, but SB 2 allows for you to go above that cap if you have an election, you go to the voters with that. Well, that is an option that will be considered. Keep in mind, the county just had an election that dealt with child care, a TRE election, tax ratification election, and the school district also had one. So as we do this analysis through the Audit and Finance Committee, and by the way, it's the Audit and Finance Committee, but it's going to be a very accountable committee in terms of reporting to the council about what's going on. But those are also things that need to be factored in, because what is it, affordability first, right? I'm pushing affordability in this community, and one of the aspects of affordability is what you're paying in property taxes, particularly in your combined property tax rate.
You mentioned finding a funding mechanism to support homelessness services. Tell us a little bit about what you're thinking there.
Well, what I said was that I think one of the things that got somewhat broken in how we address people living homeless in our community is that we weren't putting money into the entire continuum, and in some instances we weren't looking at where you get the biggest bang for the buck. A quick example: this council, the previous council, I mean, I keep forgetting we have a brand new council, but the previous council, one of the good things that it did, in my view, was it said we're going to put more money than we have been into things like the wraparound services for permanent supportive housing. It's not just about creating a permanent supportive housing unit. We also need to provide the services so that people can succeed in that permanent supportive housing, and that gets you a bang for your buck. I don't think there was enough of that. I don't think there was enough sheltering, money put into sheltering, emergency shelters, so that you can get people off the street and treat those emergency shelters like emergency rooms in a hospital. You get people into the system. Rapid rehousing is another example of that. So one of the things that we will do is we will look at that through this process as well.
I understand there's, at the council meeting tomorrow, there will be a vote on a resolution about ECHO's kind of state of the homelessness response system report. That report, from what I saw, called for 550 new emergency shelter beds, 2,355 rapid rehousing units, and 4,175 permanent supportive housing units. That would be a big investment.
That's a lot of money.
KXAN, I think, reported that it would cost around $350 million over the next 10 years. Is that a achievable plan? Is that a reasonable plan?
The candid answer to that is that I think that is a plan that we should accept or receive or adopt as a guideline. I don't think that the governing body of the city of Austin ought to just adopt that ECHO plan. And one of the good things we also did is that in 2023, the city of Austin did something that it hadn't really done well, in my view, up until we did this, and that was created a homeless strategy office. That homeless strategy office is our homeless strategy office, and it is doing a very good job of helping us with the strategies. And ECHO is someone we should look to help provide guidance, but I don't know that we should adopt whole cloth ECHO's plan, except as one of the things we look to and one of the things we seek guidance and help. Again, back to my point, I think part of what we need to do is, utilizing this new committee structure, have a real finance committee working in conjunction with the public health committee, which is chaired by our Mayor Pro Tem, Vanessa Fuentes, working in conjunction with them, then come up with our plan utilizing guidance.
I mean, I think we can all agree that this is a really tough challenge, right? And part of
again, it's Wednesday.
Right. I mean, and this is in a situation where you build a shelter and all the challenges are fixed, right? It would require a lot of different services. It would require a major investment. I mean, what in your mind does success look like? Well,
I would love to get us to the situation that there are many ways to define success. But there are ways to succeed that don't get to the idea of somebody telling you, we're going to end homelessness. I've always kind of recoiled at that phrase. And then when you say, really, you're going to end homelessness? Well, what I mean by that is we will have net zero new homeless, because we're putting, that always seems to me to be kind of a political statement. But I'll give you an example of success. And by the way, an example of where we started this conversation. And that is, if we have much better success in addressing the brain health issues of many of our people that are living on the street, mental health issues, then I'm willing to declare that you would have some success, even though we're still going to have people living homeless, and we're still going to have people that are going to find themselves with brain health issues. Everything from the focus that you've seen the county, but the city has also agreed to put money into over a 3-year pilot on diverting people from jail, but things like therapeutic housing. I was the senator that pushed to get Dell Medical School to do a study of our mental health services in Central Texas. We passed legislation. That was, and Steve Strakowski at the Dell Medical School, the chair of the psychiatry department, did a study on that. And I was the senator that pushed and led on getting the funding to build the new ASH Austin State Hospital. Well, we ought to be building that whole system out, and that would be a form of success, because I promise you it would make a difference in how many people are living on the street right now.
All right, let's talk about housing. A big, I think, success of the city in recent months and years. The city saw a 12.6% year-over-year decrease in rents. Talk a little bit about how that was accomplished.
Well, I appreciate the way you phrase that question. Nobody ever says that was we had a success. Wait till you hear their questions. Anyway, but I really do appreciate that, because we have had an enormous success. And when I said a minute ago that we're kind of the vanguard, I'm telling you, the rest of the country is looking at what we've done. But it had a couple of elements to it. One is we had to get out of our own way. And when I was running for mayor in 2022, not a single person, not one, nobody, no one came up to me and said, Watson, don't screw with the permitting process. That shit really working good. Nobody said that. Nobody. In fact, what we found when we looked at it was that we were adding, the city of Austin was adding enormous costs to folks trying to build because of the delay it took in, for example, getting a site plan. Well, we brought in an international consulting firm to look at that, make recommendations, and there are people in this room, you don't have to believe me, there are people in this room that will tell you we've made a difference in that regard. And the culture has changed. Now, we're not done, but that's one example where we got out of our own way in some instances. The second is we made it easier to put housing on the ground. Now you can put 3 units where you used to be able to put only 1. One of the big differences that everybody across the country keeps looking at, which is a really important one, and by the way, this is something that in the last session of the legislature, there was even legislation to try to do, it didn't pass, but try to do what we did, and that is reduce minimum lot size. Austin's minimum lot size was 5,750 square feet. 5,750 square feet. That was created in 1947. It was increased from 3,000 square feet to get to 5,750. It was a segregationist thing that was being done. And it took us all those years to drop it to 1,800 square feet. The highest cost in building something is the dirt. And if you make me put something on 5,750 square feet, I'm going to have to build something big. But if you let me do it on 1,800 square feet, I can build things that are more affordable. And so I could go on, but we have done some big changes that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think this is something we can partner on with the legislature.
Well, that cues up my next question, which is that this is going to be a big issue for the legislature this session. It's an interesting area where there seems to be a certain amount of bipartisan agreement around the idea. I mean, I guess I kind of want to pose this in 2 ways. One, what's your advice to the state? And is there anything you're hoping for from the state to address this challenge?
That's great. Well, first of all, go back to what I was saying a minute ago about how create partnerships when we can create partnerships and don't create unnecessary enemies. There are many people that would vote for what I just said on a minimum lot size that vote in a different primary than I do, that are going to vote for that different lot size for reasons completely unrelated to the reasons I might have done it. And here's the key part. We can't get worked up about the purity of why somebody might be doing what we want them to do. They may be shooting at the same target, but from a different angle. Okay, we're shooting at the same target. So that's a key part of that. I would like them to look at things that help us with tools. I don't want them to tell cities, you have to do this. Let cities be cities. We're the ones closest to the constituents. We're the ones talking to our realtors. We're the ones talking to our real estate council. We're the ones talking to the home builders. We're able to do that, but in some instances we need tools. I'll tell you one of the biggest affordability issues is insurance. Insurance on a house or your units. Well, Hager, the comptroller, who by the way has talked a lot about affordability, and he specifically mentions the cost of insurance. Well, that's an area where I'm not going to be able to do much on insurance. I need help, and the legislature ought to be in a better position to help me. So those are the kinds of tools that we might talk about.
Okay. I want to remind folks we will have audience questions toward the end, read by our events director, Matt Ewalt. He is holding up over there the, what do you call that, QR code, where people can submit questions. So if you have a question, we'll ask them here in about 5 or 6 minutes. There's also note cards around the tables and he'll bring you a card if you want to raise your hand and write down a question as well. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Project Connect. Okay. I grew up in Austin. I was in high school when the when a train.
When I was mayor last
Yeah,
time,
sorry,
is what you're saying.
I didn't really want to say that.
Yeah, kind of. All of a sudden, this turned vicious.
Yes, I am now. Have my own children. We still don't have a train. We have a train, but we don't have a large train system. Voters approved Project Connect in 2020. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Okay, yeah.
They approved it overwhelmingly.
Right.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah. There have been multiple delays. The costs have gone up. The scale has gone down. There have been lawsuits in various ways in the courts. There's a decent chance this will reach the Supreme Court. My question to you is, my son is now 9. Will he, as an Austin resident, ever step onto a Project Connect train?
If I have my way, he will. And I feel very strongly about this. Look, let's go back to what you just said to make me look old. I was the mayor the first time we put rail on the ballot in 2000. And he's right, we barely lost. We actually won in Austin, but the election was in the whole Capital Metro service area, and we lost in precincts outside of Austin by a big enough margin that we ended up barely losing overall. Here's the key. Pause and think about what a different city we would be today had we passed it and started building it, and we're 25 years later. The discussions would be about where we're going to extend it, how we're going to reach different parts of our community. And importantly, think about this. How much cheaper would it have been? The best time to have built rail in Austin, Texas was in 2000. The second best time is right now, so that your children will be in a situation where they can benefit from this. Yes, it's been a fight, and it will continue to be a fight until the fight's over, but the citizens of Austin voted for this, and I'm going to defend that and work to do that. And I truly believe that we're right on the legal issues and how the funding mechanism and those kinds of things, so we'll continue to move forward.
Why is this so hard?
Sometimes it beats me. I was 6'5" the first time we put this on the ballot, and I've run my head into that wall enough times that look what you got. My feet barely touch the ground in this chair. But here's I think it's hard because to some degree it's always been a political fight, and it's always been an all or nothing political fight, and go back to the concept of practical idealism. We can't make what we're doing in local government and make local government work if we make things all or nothing approaches. And this has always been that way. I remember being in the legislature and being surprised at efforts to kill rail that were being done pretty much on a partisan basis. And I never did really understand that. Think about what would happen in this state. The amount of money that went into Amtrak in the last presidential administration was around $66 billion. Think of what would happen if we could tie Dallas, Fort Worth to San Antonio to Houston and back up with Amtrak, and then just think about Austin to San Antonio if we didn't just have one train going a day. How you would tie that economic corridor together, how you could tie education together, where somebody could be at ACC and also be at Alamo College in San Antonio. So if I'm candid about it, I do not get why people feel the need to try to kill it so much. But I know what the people of Austin have told me they want me to do.
All right, Matt, let's go ahead and go to audience questions.
And we have a hard stop at noon. We know that the mayor needs to get on his way, but we'll get to as many questions as possible. And we'll also, by the way, share your questions with the mayor and his team so that he knows what else is on people's minds. Alexandria writes, for your first term, you campaigned to prioritize early child care. How are you going to prioritize home-based child care providers?
Well, what a wonderful question, and thank you for asking it. Good. I appreciate you. I'm going to give you a two-part answer. Number one is one of the things that we did, we were the first city in Texas to give a 100% tax abatement or exemption to businesses, which was all the law allowed us to do, where they were not home-based child care, but to businesses. And then what we did, because we wanted home-based child care to get some of that same benefit, is we created a grant program. And we're utilizing a grant program so that we can't give the tax exemption or abatement, but we can deal with grants. And I anticipate that will be one of those kinds of things that will get expanded with, and I supported, and in a big way I supported, the tax ratification election that the county just had that will provide $60 million for things related to child care. And I think home-based child care is going to have to be a big part of that. The second part of the answer I will give to you is we haven't talked about some of the priorities of the next 4 years, but one of my priorities for the next 4 years is to begin the process to make Austin the best city in America to be a kid. And there are at least 3 pillars as I sit here right now. One of those is childcare, and building on what we just did with the county election will be a key part of that. The second pillar, while not directly to your question, I want to tell everybody, the second pillar is child health and safety. And the third pillar will be child success. And I've now been sworn back in. This will be a high priority, but a key aspect of that has to be child care. And there's no way you can do child care the right way without us focusing on home-based child care. So thanks for that question.
This person writes, how would the president's freeze on federal aid impact your goals for addressing homelessness? How would it affect the plans for renovations out at ABIA?
Okay, well, I've talked about the ABIA. In fact, I specifically referred to that. And then we're looking at how it will impact homelessness. And remember what I also told you is we're not only looking at what the freeze might do with regard to homelessness, we're actually looking at, as I said, the ARPA money, the one-time money, all of that funding with related to homelessness, and that's going to take us just a while. One of the things, if you all have questions about these grants, Carrie Rogers is standing over there. Carrie is our, I guess, still brand new head of our Intergovernmental Affairs Department at the City of Austin, and also is in charge of our grant programs. So she moves into a new job from Dallas and then had all this hit all at once. So let's all welcome Carrie. And but if you have questions, and she's really good, I'm real pleased that she's helping us. So if you have questions, reach out to Carrie, and she can also be helpful.
Seeing what has unfolded in LA and knowing Austin is in the top 5 for wildfire risk, how are you thinking about wildfire preparedness in Austin?
Well, LA changes everything, right? But the good news for Austin is that our psyche LA, if you will, was in 2011 when Bastrop County and parts of Travis County. So what happened at that point in time, and let me just say something. The candid thing to say as your mayor is that there will be a time when we have a very dangerous wildfire. I hate to say it that way because it's scary as hell, but with our fuel, with our topography, with the dryness, with our density, there's just a lot of things that play into that. That's why that ranking is what it is. But in 2011, and I won't go into all the detail, but in 2011, what that did is it prompted us to look at things differently. We didn't need LA to happen for us to act. And so one of the big things that we did was, just to give an example, is like 900, all of our firefighters are trained in wildfires and how to address those. That, by the way, that was one of the concerns out in LA about how much training there had been in wildfires. But we've already, we not just a portion of our folks, all of our folks. We have our interdepartmental work is pretty significant between our water utility and our firefighters, so that on an ongoing basis, we're making sure that fire hydrants are working. That sounds simple, but it's a big deal, right? And it's being prepared. In addition to that, Austin is unique in that we have voluntarily created what's called a WUI, which I don't really like the word, but WUE, Wildland Urban Interface Program. And we have done that, and we're actually working on how we can upgrade that right now. We were already working on that before LA happened. And in this first quarter, you're going to see a couple of things come out of that. And I anticipate that the council will vote on some changes. And by the way, that includes things related to embers and how embers can fly and how you might harden your homes. So I think by March, maybe April, the council will be voting on aspects of that. So there's a whole lot of work going on in this regard. If you don't subscribe to the Watson Wire, why? But in fact, that's a very timely question, because today's Watson Wire, which hopefully I say today, it may be tomorrow, the Watson Wire is going out, is about this. And it also will include some things that the city can't just do this. People are going to have to do things that harden their homes. And they're going to be things people don't like. They're going to be things like not having shrubbery and things up near houses, because that's just fuel, things of that nature. But this will also mention some of those. So there's a lot going on.
So we have a few minutes here. I have 3 questions I'm trying to get to.
The questions aren't that bad. It's the answers that take a while.
I think people appreciate a substantive answer, that's all right. But 2 related to housing from different perspectives. First, when looking at the housing continuum, what is being done for legacy homeowners that are being pushed out because of affordability? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to ask the other one here for you. This person, 26-year-old UT grad who wants to buy a house in Austin, but the rising cost of property taxes is making the annual cost of home ownership outpace my income. How can we solve this problem on the local level instead of relying on the state to raise the homestead exemption?
Well, all that we've been doing, I'm going to go to the 26-year-old first. All that we've been doing is directly related to the question that the 26-year-old asked. Those are the kinds of things we're doing to get more supply. We're building more what I call big A affordable housing, which in many instances is other people refer to as deeply affordable or subsidized. But by getting more supply, that makes a difference across the board. And you can read things like the Pew Charitable Trust studies that they've done. It really does make a difference. And that's directed at. In fact, the way I have always talked about this is I worry that Austin is creating intergenerational inequity. Where, I got mine, you get yours. And I saw one person just roll their eyes, so I know what my next question will be. Yeah, I saw you. I used to be old friend. Anyway, we're creating intergenerational inequity. And people ask me all the time, how do I keep Austin Austin? Well, one of the ways we keep Austin Austin is we keep Austin the place that it's been for decades, where somebody comes to that fountain of youth. We call that little public university the University of Texas at Austin, or Houston Tillotson, or St. Ed's, or Concordia. And every year, all these new young people come here. All of them come here with their new music, their new thinking, their new culture, with their greater diversity. And then they say, after about a year, ooh, I never want to leave. And they have brought the change to Austin that keeps Austin open. Keep Austin weird? Well, most ideas the first time we hear them are weird, but they become a big part of it. We can't let Austin cut it off so that 26-year-olds can't stay here. Just can't do that. With regard to the other question about legacy homeowners, the number one thing there is what the government can actually control, and that is what we do that increases their cost of being in that house. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier. High on that list, of course, is property taxes.
So let's close with this question. Sarah writes, you've been involved with the World Council of Mayors. Austin, like all large cities, is a globally connected city. How do you perceive Austin in a global context?
Oh, wow. So one of the things, by the way, to the question on childcare, the U.S. Conference of Mayors just created a brand new child care task force to work on from a national perspective, and the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors asked me to be the chair of that. So I'm the first chair of that child care task force, and I mentioned that just because they mentioned the Conference of Mayors. And the question is from an international point of view. Look, the first time I was mayor, Austin was becoming a big international city. Today, like it or not, Austin is a big international city. And all you need for a little bit of, the rest of the world looks at Austin through a prism and through eyes that Austin is on the cutting edge as a focal point in a worldwide information and technology economy. And one of the best ways to know that is the first time I was mayor this time, I guess in early 23, when South by Southwest came, the number of international leaders, mayors, diplomats that want to be here and do business with the mayor's office and the city of Austin, it surprised me. I mean, because it just, in fact, the joke I made was that apparently there's an international treaty that a diplomat or mayor of an international city can't get reimbursed for South by Southwest unless they have their picture made with the mayor. Talk about keeping property taxes low. I'm going to start charging for that. But it is important for Austin to mature emotionally, in some instances, into its role as a big international city. And from the perspective of our economics, we will lose something if we don't do that. We didn't get to talk about workforce development and what we're doing with ACC and those kinds of things, but with what we're doing in infrastructure and those kinds of things to keep up with the role we play on an international level, we have real opportunity for the people living here right now, and we ought to take advantage of that. But Austin is a big international city. It makes a difference to our quality of life, and I hope in the next 4 years to help lead as we lean into what that means.
All right. And that is a good way to end it. Mayor, thank you for being here.
Thank you all very much.